Welcome to Heritage Food Stories, episode 14, Orthodox Easter, the Great Schism, the Ethiopian Church, and the food that brings it all together. Easter is almost here, but which Easter? If you assumed all Christians celebrate on the same day, you're not alone. Most people do. But this year, while Catholic and Protestant churches mark Easter on April 5th, 2026, millions of Orthodox Christians around the world will gather for a completely separate celebration a week later on April 12th. And the story behind that difference goes back nearly 2,000 years. Today, we're pulling back the curtain on the Orthodox Christian Church, where it came from, why it split from Catholicism, how it differs from what most Western audiences grew up with, and of course, the extraordinary food traditions that make Orthodox Easter one of the most spectacular feasts in the world. I'm your host, Chef Mireille, chef, food historian, and culinary storyteller with a lifelong passion for exploring global cuisines with you and the stories behind the food we eat. Before we get started, don't forget to like and subscribe so you don't miss a single episode. So, what exactly is the Orthodox Christian Church? The Orthodox Christian Church is one of the oldest branches of Christianity, tracing its roots directly to the earliest centuries of the faith. Unlike Protestant denominations, which broke away from Catholicism during the Reformation in the 1500s, Orthodoxy never went through this kind of rupture. It has held on to many of the earliest practices, rituals, and forms of worship that were established in the first centuries of the church. One thing that surprises many people is that there is no single leader of the Orthodox Church, no figure equivalent to the Pope. Instead, it is a network of independent churches, often organized by country or region. Some of the most well-known include the Greek Orthodox Church, the Russian Orthodox Church, the Serbian Orthodox Church, and the Romanian Orthodox Church. Orthodox worship is deeply sensory and symbolic. Services are rich with incense, chanting, and sacred icons, images that connect worshipers to centuries of shared history and faith. The single most important moment in understanding Orthodox Christianity is the Great Schism of 1054, the official split between Eastern and Western Christianity. But like most major historical events, this didn't happen overnight. It was the slow buildup of centuries of tension. Language played a major role. The Western Church operated in Latin, the Eastern Church in Greek. Over time, this made communication harder and led to genuinely different ways of interpreting the same theological ideas. Politics deepened the divide. After the fall of the Western Roman Empire in 476 AD, the two halves of the former empire went in very different directions. The Eastern Roman Empire, centered in Constantinople, modern-day Istanbul, continued to thrive, while the West fragmented. The two regions were no longer closely connected, and that included their churches. Authority was perhaps the sharpest point of conflict. The Pope in Rome believed he should hold supreme power over all Christians everywhere. Eastern church leaders disagreed fundamentally. They believed leadership should be shared, not concentrated in one person. And then there was a surprisingly technical but deeply symbolic theological dispute that pushed everything over the edge: the Filioque controversy. In the Western Church, a single word was added to the Nicene Creed, the foundational statement of Christian belief that dates back to the 4th century. That word was filioque, Latin for "and the Son." The change made the creed say that the Holy Spirit comes from both God the Father and the Son. The Eastern Church objected strenuously, not just to the theological meaning, but to the very idea that one branch of the church could unilaterally change something that had been agreed upon by all church leaders centuries earlier? To people today, this can sound like a very minor disagreement about wording, but what it really raised was a fundamental question. Who has the authority to change the core beliefs of the church? For Eastern Christians, this line had been crossed. The dispute became one of the most defining points of separation between East and West, and it's still not resolved today. If the Filioque controversy created a theological rift, the Fourth Crusade created an emotional and political one that lasted for generations. In the early 1200s, instead of traveling to the Holy Land as intended, Western Crusaders attacked and sacked Constantinople, one of the most sacred cities of Eastern Christianity. The destruction was devastating, and the betrayal felt profound. Many historians point to this event as the moment that made reconciliation between the Eastern and Western churches nearly impossible for centuries. Now there's yet even an older divergence. Not all Orthodox Christians belong to the same tradition. One of the most fascinating examples is the Ethiopian Orthodox Tewahedo Church, which represents a separate and even earlier break in Christian history. This church belongs to a group called the Oriental Orthodox Churches, whose separation from what became mainstream Eastern Orthodoxy dates all the way back to 451 AD, over 600 years before the Great Schism. The disagreement happened at the Council of Chalcedon, a major gathering of church leaders trying to define how Christians should understand the nature of Jesus. The council declared that Jesus has two distinct natures, one fully human, one fully divine, existing together. The Ethiopian church, along with several others, rejected this definition. They believe Jesus has one unified nature that is both human and divine at once, not two separate ones. This may sound like a subtle distinction, but in the world of early theology, it was considered essential. Rather than accept the council's ruling, these churches went their own way. The Ethiopian Orthodox Church is one of the oldest Christian institutions in the world, and Ethiopia itself is one of the earliest nations in history to adopt Christianity as a state religion back in the 4th century. There was a brief Catholic interlude in the 17th century. Portuguese Jesuit missionaries arrived in Ethiopia and gained significant influence at the royal court. The emperor, King Sosenyos, eventually converted to Catholicism, and for a short period, the country was aligned with Rome. But the Ethiopian people resisted strongly. Conflict broke out, the decision was reversed, the Jesuits were expelled, and the Ethiopian Orthodox Church was restored. It remains the dominant form of Christianity in Ethiopia to this day, a remarkable testament to how deeply people are committed to preserving their own traditions. Like the Orthodox Church, the Oriental Christians in Ethiopia will be celebrating Easter, known as Fasika, in Ethiopia a week later than the Western Church. So why does Orthodox Easter fall on April 12th in 2026? Here's the heart of the question so many people are searching for right now. Most Western Christians will be celebrating Easter on April 5th this year in 2026. Orthodox Christians, Greek, Russian, Romanian, Serbian, Egyptian, Coptic, and many others, celebrated on April 12th. Why the difference? It all comes down to the calendar. Western churches follow the Gregorian calendar, introduced in 1582. Most Orthodox churches and the Oriental Church in Ethiopia still follow the older Julian calendar, which runs 13 days behind the Gregorian. Since the date of Easter is calculated based on the spring equinox and the first full moon that follows, using two different calendar systems naturally produces two different dates. There's also an additional rule that applies specifically to Orthodox Easter. It must always fall after Jewish Passover. Western churches don't follow this restriction. In 2026, this actually pushed the Catholic Easter date to April 5th, while the Orthodox date lands on April 12th. The two celebrations align roughly every few years. 2025 was one of those rare shared years. The next time they'll coincide is 2028. Now let's talk a little bit about clothing and culture. Clothing in the Orthodox tradition is about more than appearance. It's an expression of reverence, humility, and connection to centuries of practice. In most Orthodox churches, you'll generally see modest dress, shoulders and knees covered, loose and non-revealing garments for both men and women. Women often wear head coverings, particularly during services. The expectations can vary, stricter in places like Russia or Greece, and somewhat more relaxed in American Orthodox communities, though modesty is universally encouraged. Clergy dress is particularly striking. Priests and bishops wear long, flowing robes in deep golds, whites, and reds, each layer carrying specific symbolic meaning. Regional traditions add beautiful variation. In the Ethiopian Orthodox Church, worshippers often wear traditional white garments called netela, creating a breathtaking visual of unity and simplicity. In Eastern Europe, more formal and darker attire is common, especially during major feast days. In Middle Eastern Orthodox communities like Lebanon, Syria, and Egypt, local cultural styles blend with the traditional expectations of modesty. Now for the part that binds everything together, and my favorite part, the food. Orthodox Lent is serious. For many believers, it involves 40 to 48 days of fasting from meat, dairy, and sometimes fish and olive oil. After that kind of restraint, the Easter feast is not just a meal, it's a celebration of resurrection in every sense. Here's a taste of what lands on the table across from different Orthodox cultures. Some of these recipes are on my website and will be linked in the show notes. Let's start with Greece. You have margaritsa, a rich lamb offal soup, eaten immediately after the midnight resurrection service on Holy Saturday, traditionally the first food eaten after the Lenten fast. Sureki, a sweet braided Easter bread flavored with orange zest and traditional spices like mastic and maleb, often decorated with red dyed eggs. Kolorakia, buttery twisted Easter cookies baked on Holy Tuesday. Whole lamb roasted on a spit on Easter Sunday morning, the centerpiece of the feast. Sugrisma, the beloved egg cracking game where red dyed eggs are tapped together. Whoever's egg survives uncracked is said to have good luck for the year. Now let's go to Russia. Kulich, a tall cylindrical sweetbread similar to Italian panettone, decorated with white icing and the letters XB, meaning Christ is risen. Pashka, a molded dessert made from curd cheese, butter, and dried fruit. Painted and decorated eggs blessed in church baskets alongside bread, meat, and dairy. In Armenia, you have shoreg, a sweet braided bread similar to soreki, but flavored with maleb and sometimes black sesame. In Romania, you have cozonac, a rich sweet bread similar in spirit to other Easter breads across the Orthodox world. Goliva, a wheat berry sweet salad with symbolic meaning connected to death and resurrection. In Poland, you have chalka, a traditional braided bread similar to Jewish challah. Now in Ethiopia, there's neter kebab, not just for Easter, but whatever you are making, whether it is roast lamb or potatoes, cook it with some neter kebab, the amazing spiced ghee from Ethiopia, and it will elevate every dish. And across most Easter traditions, Lamb dishes, including roast leg of lamb, lamb kofta, and Turkish pide, are common. The red egg appears across almost all of these traditions, dyed to represent the blood of Christ, cracked open to symbolize the resurrection. Like I said, some of these recipes are on my website and will be linked in the show notes. So, Orthodox Christianity today. It is practiced across a wide arc of the globe. Countries with large Orthodox populations include Greece, Russia, Serbia, Romania, Bulgaria, Georgia, Ukraine, Cyprus, Lebanon, Egypt, and Turkey. Ethiopia stands apart as one of the oldest and most continuously Christian nations in the world. In the United States, there are thriving Greek Orthodox, Romanian Orthodox, Russian Orthodox, and Serbian Orthodox communities, many of which have maintained their distinct food and worship traditions across multiple generations. The Orthodox Christian Church is not one thing. It is a constellation of ancient traditions shaped by language, geography, theology, and centuries of history. The Ethiopian grandmother wrapping herself in white Nutella before Easter service. The Russian family lining up to have their Easter baskets blessed at midnight. The Greek family cracking red eggs around the table on April 12th. They are all part of one long branching story. As Easter approaches in its two forms this year, the diversity of how people celebrate is a reminder that shared beliefs can take root in very different soils. Culture and faith grow together, and those differences are worth knowing and worth tasting. Thanks for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. You can explore over 1,000 recipes from around the world on my website, linked in the show notes. Whether you're cooking tonight or just curious, there's something there for you. I'm Chef Mireille. See you next time.